Hey guys, if you've been watching the channel, you're probably maybe chomping at the bit to see what's going on with my new rig, my solar, and all that stuff. If you're new to the channel, I am full-timing in an RV. I'm picking here in Kansas, I'm picking up a new fifth wheel, swapping away from Class A Newmar, and this is a New Horizons fifth wheel. And we're at a campground for the weekend here, and we're going to go back to New Horizons to complete the delivery process. We stay at New Horizons for approximately a week or so they can get through any punch list items to fix or anything else of that nature. So that's why I'm out here, and it turned out to be great. This is a gorgeous weather out here in Kansas this weekend. It's a little unusual. It's going to be 82, I think, today, and I think normal is like 50 something or other. So anyway, let's hop to it. I'm just going to go real quick through a bunch of stuff. This is sort of a teaser video, if you will. There's going to be a ton more to come, but I wanted to give you a little bit of stuff now that we've kind of settled in and I've got my solar system working, and so that's super exciting. I've been so busy between, I took last week off from work, and I've just been nonstop working with New Horizons on things and trying to get my stuff installed and just get training and all that sort of stuff. So I just haven't had time to do this. I go to bed at night feeling like, you know, I'm like 100 years old, and I wake up a little bit refreshed. So I've got my Ford F350 maxed out with the 14K towing capacity. Actually, I don't remember exactly what that 14K refers to, but it's got a 55,242 payload capacity, dually, of course. It's a 2020, I think, model year, so it's got the 10-speed diesel. This thing is a beast. It's got an enormous amount of power. I'm really looking forward to that. The Newmar, while towing, was heavier with a smaller engine. This is a bigger engine. I've got less weight, so I should have. This will be night and day going up the mountains. So here's my fifth wheel. New Horizons builds their fifth wheels for you. They basically customize it to whatever you want to do. So they had a showroom model that is what they are calling their rear kitchen design, which is absolutely gorgeous and fantastic. You'll see that in a minute. I customized it down from their 40-foot model to a 38-foot model. I just wanted to be a little bit smaller, shorter. I mean, it is just me, and it'll give me a little bit more access to the parks and things of that nature. You'll see here, this is a Gen Y gooseneck hitch instead of a fifth wheel. That's got torsion suspension in it. That was important to me, just better ride quality. Plus, I'm going to be doing a lot of boondocking, and so when the trailer is sort of articulating around the bed of the truck, when I'm doing a little bit of basically off-roading in order to get to some of these sites, that's important. Plus, I don't have this giant fifth wheel hitch thing in the bed of the truck. I just have a pin, a ball, and a couple of points for hooking up the chains. So I have full access to the bed of the truck when I'm not towing. So that's about enough. I mean, what is there really to see on the outside of the unit other than, it's a fifth wheel. It's an RV. It's got, it's pretty standard, type of stuff. I have 4 slides on this unit. The first thing that's really nice about it is the basement storage, which is relatively full because I'm still doing some work on the solar, so I got tools and nonsense everywhere right now that I just kind of threw back in here last night, but yeah, the lights are on, so you can see it. We'll talk about the Victrons over there in a minute, but I got some nice storage space in here. This is probably, 3 feet or so you can easily kind of squat and walk around in there, and this will be a ton of storage space, despite the fact that I've taken up a lot of room with inverter stuff and batteries and whatnot. And there is a panel cover here where you could put like AGMs or lead acids in there. Since I'm not doing that, I don't know what I'm going to put down there. It's essentially directly exposed to the ground. This compartment is heated, but obviously below that isn't heated. Maybe I could transform that into something, and whatever, we'll see. But so that's the idea behind this sort of protrusion into the basement is the LG mini split. That is huge. We'll talk about that. There's a lot of advantages to that. And so yeah, let's start with the batteries, because that's been essentially the project I've been working on since, I don't know, October, September perhaps, and is certainly key to my system here. So this is part of the beauty of working with New Horizons, is the customization. So this is not what they normally do for access to the basement, to the front. You know, they have much smaller doors that like swing down or up or whatever, and I wanted as much access to the front here as possible, so I had them open it wide open, and they put this double set of French doors in, and so I could put my batteries in here. So you can see, if you've been following the channel, this is the batteries that I've had in my parents' garage or the lab for a while now, but this is 28 kilowatt hours worth of battery at 40. It's a 48 volt system, and if 28 kilowatt hours doesn't mean anything to you, perhaps this will mean something. This is the equivalent of 22 Battle-Born 100 amp hour batteries at about $1,000 a pop. That's approximately $22,000 worth of batteries if you were to buy Battle-Borns. I built this battery for approximately $4,000. Got the cells from China, you know, the BMS, like all the parts and materials are about $4,000. At some point I'm going to put together a full price list and get that number right. But so I built and designed that. I had New Horizons help me out. I had the welder come out, and after I arrived, actually last week, he put this in. So I had you know, essentially a shelf to put these batteries in. Got the bus bars in for the 48 volt system. That's my solar charge controller. It's a beast. It's nice and hot right now because we're pulling some pretty good power off the panels. I just have my cheap little laptop. This thing has been amazing. It's a $367 laptop. I'll link to it in the description. And so I use this for monitoring the BMS, configuring the Victron stuff. I have VNC server installed on here, so I can connect to it remotely and see what's happening here on the screen from inside. I still have stuff to mount and do, stuff that I just didn't need to do to get the system up and running. I really wanted to get the system up and running over the weekend, so that happened last night. So here's the rest of the battery bank, and I'm going to be pulling out the Xantrex inverter that New Horizons supplies. That basically what I did, they have to deliver a fully functioning unit. They're not willing to go to this length or use the Victrons, especially not in the configuration I've got them in. So they have to deliver a fully functioning unit, and that meant a Xantrex 1200 watt inverter. The only thing connected to this is the refrigerator, and then a converter for charging the 12 volt system and all the 12 volt stuff here. So a lot of this is going to get pulled out and changed and whatnot as I continue my conversion. I've only done the 48 volt side, and the 12 volt side is still powered by their converter that's plugged into this plug, and this plug is powered by the Victrons. So it's a relatively inefficient way to convert my 48 volts to 12. So it's going 48 to 120 back to 12 in order to keep the 12 volt system running. So that'll get swapped out at some point. So I think that's it to cover from this side. So if we head in, you can see the panels are still off, but here's my two Victron Quattro 48 volt 5 kVA each inverters. So I have up to 10 kVA, or approximately 8,000 watts if I were to perfectly balance line 1 and line 2. And I did this in this configuration because the mini split is a 240 volt appliance, which is really unusual for an RV to have an actual 240 volt split phase requirement. So that's why I've got two Victrons. They're each providing power for each phase. And this was the transfer switch that'll be coming out. So you can see I basically just pulled out the wires and sort of jumpered it into the system, nice and dirty for now, but it's functional. So a lot of this stuff is going to get changed and routed and cleaned up and whatnot. But that's the inverter side of the house. And I've got the solar panels on the roof. They provided 2 drops down from the roof with 4 gauge wires each, and that is for me, that is absolutely overkill, which is great. So I have effectively no power loss from the runs coming down from the roof, because the panels are, what I have up there are 335 watt panels. I have 10 of them. So I have 3.35 kilowatts of solar on the roof, and they are configured in a 2 in series, 5 parallel configuration. So those panels are the Panasonic high efficiency panels, which run at a very high voltage. Their open circuit voltage is somewhere around 70 volts. So I have 140 volts coming down here, and that means that I'm only, I'm pulling like 20 amps or something. I forget. I do the math at what's 3,000 watts at 140 volts. It's not a lot of amperage, right? So I don't need big wires, but I got them, so which is great. So I have each one on a breaker, and which feeds into the solar charge controller in the front. You can see this is just kind of hanging here, so that's on my to-do list to get that hooked up, but it works. So we'll touch real brief on what's coming next. This is a back here is just a small solar charge controller that's going to be for ground mount. It can handle a 48 volt nominal battery, and the panels that I have are 24 volt panels, 2 in series. So that'll get mounted, and I'll have a way to externally connect. This is my 48 volt to 12 volt DC to DC converter, their Orion isolated converter. This will be the battery protect that's in front of that to shut down power to this at a certain voltage. So the idea here is that the inverters will shut off at a particular voltage, and that'll shut off at a particular voltage, because the BMS here really shouldn't be shutting down the battery when it gets down below a certain range. That's sort of your last ditch, save the battery type of stuff. Your system should be doing that kind of thing for you. So that's how that's all going to get configured. And I do have a switch in here with a resistor, which is my manual pre-charge method for the moment. At some point, the BMS, it's due this month. The BMS will have a feature for pre-charge, and I'll be able to automate that with the resistor. So that's coming. That came loose apparently, and yeah, that's the physical DC side of things. So if we come inside, we can see some cool graphs, and you can see my buddy racing out of the way. Hi, Aaron. That's my friend Aaron. This is let me start actually with the Victron information. That what you're looking at is not sort of out of the box stuff. So if I had the Victron display panel hooked up, it would be showing this information, but you can also remote into it in order to get the same information. I was apparently configuring stuff a second ago. So if we go in here and get our display, we can see the battery is at 25%. We've got 360 watts of AC load, which is translating, well, actually it's not really translating directly, right? We've got that's awesome. 2,460 watts of solar coming in. It is, that clock is wrong on the computer. It is noon here, Kansas, in April. So 2,500 watts, that's well over 70% of my solar panel production capabilities here, noon in Kansas in April. So that's doing way better than I expected. I'm generating way more power than I expected, so I'm super happy about that. So you can see, you can follow it's charging the battery at almost 2 kilowatts. It's providing power for my AC. I'm not connected to shore or a grid. If I were, that would show up here. So that's sort of your out-of-the-box Victron information somewhere in one of these windows. I'm not gonna be able to find it, so let's just do this. We'll go to the VRM dashboard, right? So that the brains of the unit, the Victron Servo, is communicating up to Victron for free. You get this service for free, so you get that same information here and some historical data. So you can see, let's change this to today, and you can see I've produced 5.1 kilowatt hours of solar. I've consumed 6.1 kilowatt hours, but that's about to change. We're gonna have more production than consumption at some point, but great way to sort of dig into what's happening with your system. And what you saw on the screen when I came in was this Grafana dashboard that I've been playing around with. Victron has an unsupported set of Docker images using Docker Compose to bring them all up together. Really simple way to get at some capabilities for doing incredibly custom graphing that I'm still playing with. I mean, you just create graphs, drag and drop, resize, do whatever you want. There's a ton of data that you can get out of the Victron Servo, so I'm still playing with this. But you can see how my solar production has been increasing over as the sun gets higher, and battery in or out, and my AC loads. This is when the heat pump, the mini split, was running. We had the heat on for a little while this morning. We'll talk about all that stuff and some raw numbers about state of charge and all that sort of thing. And then I can graph line 1 AC load, line 2 AC load, so that I can see if I'm out of balance or in danger from that aspect. So at some point I'll find a way to put this graph somewhere where I can see it. So let's talk about that mini split, which is like the linchpin of being able to boondock comfortably. I work full-time out of the RV. That's super important for me to be able to be comfortable in front of the computer wherever I am boondocking. So I've got to be able to run the air conditioning without running the generator. I really don't want to run a generator. There is no generator in this unit. It is an option. I chose not to go for it. Ends up being really expensive because the generator needs to be a 240 volt split phase generator as New Horizons configures it. With my Victron equipment, I actually don't need a 240 volt generator. I can plug into 15 amp 120 or 30 amp 120 or 240 volt 50 amp. All that works perfectly. The Victrons know exactly what to do. You instruct it how much power to pull. It pulls only that much, so you don't pop the breaker, and supplements the rest with battery if necessary. Solar, of course, if it's available, which is just absolutely, it's magic how that works. I'll have more videos about that at some point. But real briefly, when we first got this system running at, I think it was 11:30 last night, we cranked the mini splits to maximum. And if we go back to the last 24 hours, you can see we got the solar up and running in the afternoon yesterday, and then I got the AC, the Quattros, hooked up, and you can see when we turned on the mini splits, we consumed less than a kilowatt hour in an hour. We peaked. That was our worst, was 0.89 kilowatt hours for that hour. We drew down the battery a little bit, and then we went to bed, and the battery barely discharged overnight, and now we're charging up the battery off solar. So the mini split was pulling something like 800 watts. Yes, 800 watts. We had both cassettes, this one, and there's another one in the bedroom over there, both at full blast, set for 64 degrees. Now granted, it was cooler outside because it was nighttime, and the interior wasn't that hot either. So today is gonna be 82, and at some point we're gonna fire up the mini split again and take another read on how much power it draws. But I am super excited about how little power it draws, because that is a lot less than I thought it was going to be. So that only means that I'm going to have no problems boondocking, and I just don't ever want to have to think about my power unless I've had consecutive poor sunny days, in which case I have a portable generator that's propane based. So it's capable of putting out 2.8 kilowatts, and it will plug into the propane line that I had them install on the outside of the unit. That'll be drawing off the propane bottles that are installed in the RV itself. So nice 65-inch 4K OLED TV that I had optioned in. That they have a standard TV. I said nope, use this one. I bought it and shipped it to them. Sonos Arc with woofer here, and it sounds amazing. And this is sort of one of those things that's driving me a little bit crazy, but it's it's not really New Horizons' fault. It's just the situation we're in with COVID, where factories are delayed and things like that. So I don't have the sofa I'm supposed to have here. There should be an L-shaped sectional that fully fills this area out. It's It really makes this room. So they've just given me this temporary 3-seater that I can just kind of position wherever, like whenever I leave, I have to put that on the slide out so I can bring the slide in. And then in the equipment cabinet, if you will, slash storage, I've got a few things going on here. Again, some of the customization that New Horizons let me do. I told them I want Ethernet all throughout the coach essentially, and we'll centralize it here. So I got a bunch of ports here that translates to ports around the unit. This is the Blu-ray player that they gave me. I'll pull that out. Got my Apple TV. I'm using this for my Wi-Fi right now because it's better than the Wi-Fi that comes with the MoFi 4500. If you haven't been watching my channel, the MoFi 4500 is my cellular internet router, and its Wi-Fi isn't great, and it's only 2.4 gigahertz. So I just set this to bridge, and this becomes my Wi-Fi hotspot. And last but absolutely not least is my Synology NAS here. I got, I don't know, I figured it's like 200 movies on here and a whole bunch of TV series and things like that, and it automatically downloads stuff for me. And it's also a place for me to store files and stuff, like for video editing or other things of that nature. So that's all connected up to the TV here, and provides me a lot of my entertainment stuff. And I can't really reach this. I suppose this is one of the downsides of the fifth wheel, but for me at least, I'm only 5'3". The cabinets are up higher, and there's no way for me to reach this without a step stool. So I have my MoFi 4500 cellular router here, and the signal here is good enough that I'm just using the built-in paddles for cellular. You'll see coming through the wall here are some cables, pass-through cables, so I can hook up my external. I have a 20-foot mast for an external antenna, which you may have seen me use in the past, that I can hook up here. And then this is just an antenna for one of the 3 cameras to go back to a monitor in the truck, so I can watch what's happening behind me in the trailer while I'm driving. So that was again another customization, right? And then I told them I need a power plug and Ethernet, right? So I could do all of this. So awesome. Nice little sink, very important. Coffee. I've had that thing for over 10 years. And I've never had it serviced. Another huge customization was this Blue Star commercial grade stove. Runs off propane, and it's a star configuration flame, so open burner design. So and 22,500 BTU, which is I think 15,000 I got back there is more standard, and then I've got a simmer unit there. So 22K units, 15K and simmer. Full oven. This is a standard 30-inch wide range. Nice Whirlpool. I have essentially the same thing in my current RV, and I like that as my microwave. I didn't like the convection capabilities of that one. Maybe this one's a little bit better, but you know, I probably won't use that, especially because I have an oven. Also another little customization, trash and recycling here. That was always, I never had a good place for that. I told them I want this particular fridge. Nice, deep residential fridge. It's efficient on power. When it's running, it's consuming maybe 400 watts. And of course, it's not always running. So that for a non-propane based refrigerator, right? Some RVs come with those. Those don't use much electricity at all when they're in propane mode. But for a full-size residential fridge, that's great from an efficiency perspective. More customization, right? Here's that monitor we were just looking at. It's a curved monitor, and I gave them the link and the specs, and so they cut this out, and I had them put a televator in so they can bring that monitor down using this switch here. And I also made sure that we spec'd out the cabinetry so that my computer would fit inside the cabinet here. So a little bit of a mess still here, still getting wiring and all that set up. But again, all about the customization. And let's do a quick run over here. I'm going to have them install, this is the Victron display. I'm going to have them install that here for me Monday or Tuesday. So this ends up just being your equipment panel and breakers and fuses and things like that. Relatively boring. You know, the nice bath, vessel sink, nice large walk-in shower, really large. I almost called that a pantry. Not a pantry. The other thing, you know, linen closet. Pocket door there. We got a pocket door for the bedroom. That's the other cassette for the mini split. Since I went from 40 foot to 38 foot, one of the ways I did that was to downgrade from a king to a queen. And cedar closet with a shoe rack. And another important aspect of some of the customization and decisions I made, this is a Miele washer and dryer set. And I went with this because their dryer is heat pump based. So it's way more efficient than, that's interesting, something, I guess this was rubbing up against it and damaged that. We'll have to get that. So we'll go back to New Horizons and we'll talk to them about that. Anyway, so that's going to be way more efficient on my batteries if I ever do laundry while I'm boondocking. I mean, it's a little silly to do that while you're boondocking because it does consume a lot of water to do that. So you're better off having enough clothes to get you through a boondocking session, you know, a couple weeks or however it is, however long you stay in a given location. 2 weeks can be pretty typical because at that point, like, the Forest Service kicks you out because you can't stay longer than that. I have a hamper in here, and we've got a pull-out drop-down TV, and you know, you can see again, this is, so they pulled coax here as normal, and then there is, you probably, I don't know if you can see it, there's an Ethernet jack there. At some point I'll have an Apple TV in here, so I'll get hardwired in. There's an Ethernet jack down below here, which is where we saw the batteries and inverters. There's an Ethernet jack down there, so I can hardwire in the Victron stuff. I don't want to have that stuff operating over wireless if I don't have to. Some campgrounds, you know, the spectrum is pretty crowded, so I'd rather have everything hardwired where possible. And this is just a little remote temperature monitor thing that I have. I've got sensors. The only sensor I have, quote unquote, installed somewhere is in the basement right next to the battery, and so the basement is 72 degrees. I can see that, and I'll put some other things in critical areas so I can monitor for too high temperature or too low of a temperature, like the wet bay, for example. And this is a temporary bed setup too. It's an inflatable bed because when I get back home, I'm going to swap the mattress that I have in my current RV in here. So this will become sort of the guest bed that'll go out there because I'm not entirely sure they're going to be able to get me a sleeper sofa, even though they originally said they would. But now the supplier is saying no, which is always awesome. But again, it's an artifact of the COVID situation. So, all right, so that was way longer than I wanted it to be, and it was about as fast as I could get through everything. There is a lot more to come. I'm going to do a deeper dive into the RV itself, and I'm going to do a multi-part series of videos regarding the battery and the final design and all that stuff. So if you're into that, you know, the solar, and you know, I'll get really deep into that. So feel free to ask questions if you have any about that anyway. But stay tuned because there's going to be a lot more to come. So thanks for watching. Stay safe, everybody. We'll see you soon.